Rain fell hard on the alien city of Zareth Prime. It was a city of gold towers and dirty streets, a place where the poor sold everything, even lives. Tonight, the market square was louder than ever. A crowd of aliens shouted, laughed, and waited for the next slave to be sold. On the stage stood a young alien girl. Her silver eyes were dull, her blue skin covered with dust. A metal collar glowed around her neck. The auctioneer, a fat alien with 4 eyes, shouted, "Next item, the bastard daughter of the royal traitor. Half-blood, unclean, useless." The crowd booed and threw things. The girl didn't move. She just stood there, eyes down, her hands shaking. She had no name here and only shame. Far in the back, one man watched quietly. He was human, tall, tired, wearing a worn-out coat. His name was Elias Gray, a widower who had lost his wife years ago during the war. He came to buy tools, not slaves. But when his eyes met the girl's, something stopped him. For a brief second, her eyes lifted, empty but begging for mercy. The auctioneer laughed. "No one, not even 10 credits? She's a curse. Her father betrayed the empire, and her mother was a filthy human." The crowd laughed louder. Elias stepped forward. "I'll take her." The laughter stopped. Dozens of alien eyes turned to him. "You? A human?" The auctioneer mocked. "You want this half-blood trash?" Elias's voice was calm. "Yes, how much?" The alien snorted. 5 credits just to get her off my stage." Elias paid without another word. The chains clicked open and the girl stumbled forward, too weak to walk. When she looked up, her silver eyes reflected the light of the storm above. He put his coat over her shoulders. "You're safe now," he said quietly, but she shook her head. "No one is safe from them," the crowd whispered. Some spat at them as Elias led her away. He didn't look back. The thunder grew louder behind him, echoing through the metal streets. They reached the small human district outside the city. Broken houses under flickering lamps. Elias opened the door of his cabin. It was small but warm, with a single bed, an old table, and a flickering heater. "You can rest here," he said softly. "You're free now." The girl hesitated. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "Free? There's no such thing for me." Elias frowned. "What's your name?" She looked at him for a long time. "Lyra. Lyra," he repeated. "You're safe here, Lyra." She sat near the fire, staring into the flames. For a while, neither spoke. Outside, the rain turned to wind, then she said, "You shouldn't have bought me, human. They will come for you tonight." Elias turned his head slowly. "Who will come?" Lyra's hands gripped the edge of the blanket. "The royal hunters." "I'm not supposed to exist." "The Emperor's men will find me." He studied her face, the mark glowing faintly on her neck. It wasn't just a collar. It was a symbol that pulsed with strange light. "Why are they hunting you?" he asked, she whispered. "Because I carry his blood." Thunder cracked outside. The cabin lights flickered. Elias stood up and checked the door locks. His instincts, once trained in the human defense forces, came alive again. He poured her a cup of warm water. "Drink, you'll need your strength." Lyra took it with shaking hands. "You don't understand," she said. "Anyone who touches me dies." Elias looked at her calmly. "Then I'll be the first one who doesn't." Outside, the wind howled like voices. In the distance, faint blue lights moved through the fog, alien scouts searching the streets. Lyra saw them through the window and gasped. "They're here," she whispered. Elias blew out the lamp and grabbed the old pulse rifle from the corner. His face was calm, steady, like a man who had faced storms before. "Then we'll make sure they don't come in," he said. As the door creaked and the first shadow passed by the window, Lyra's heart pounded. For the first time in her life, someone stood between her and fear, and in that dark room, the story of the human and the alien girl truly began. The storm still whispered outside. Rain tapped against the windows of the small human cabin. Inside, the air was warm but tense. Lyra sat on the edge of the bed, her silver eyes wide and full of fear. Elias Gray moved quietly around the room, checking the locks, loading his old pulse rifle, and placing 2 small lamps by the wall. He had faced war before. He had seen soldiers scream under alien skies. But tonight felt different. Tonight he wasn't fighting for a mission. He was protecting a child who didn't belong anywhere. Lyra watched him silently. Her glowing collar had dimmed, but the marks on her back still shimmered faintly through the fabric of his old shirt. Elias noticed the strange light as she moved. "What are those marks?" he asked softly. She flinched. They are not tattoos. They are chains. They burn when he calls. Who calls? Lyra's voice trembled. The Emperor, my uncle. He has my blood marked. I was born with his curse, Elias frowned, trying to understand. The words blood and curse meant different things in human and alien tongues. He only knew one thing. Fear had lived in her too long. He poured some hot water into a cup and handed it to her. She hesitated before taking it, her small hands shaking. You don't have to be afraid here, he said. Lyra gave a broken laugh. Everyone who says that dies. Elias didn't answer. He only walked to the window and pulled the curtains tighter. The rain had slowed, but faint blue flashes moved across the street. Alien patrol drones scanning for energy traces. He turned back. If they come, we stay quiet. Understood? She nodded weakly. Suddenly a loud metallic thud echoed from outside and a drone landing on the roof. Lyra gasped, clutching her collar. The faint light around her neck began to pulse brighter and faster. They found me, she whispered. Elias moved fast. He pulled open the loose floorboard near the bed, a hiding space he had built long ago to store supplies. Get in, he said firmly. Lyra shook her head. They'll sense me. The mark, just get in, he ordered. His tone was calm but sharp, the tone of a man who'd seen fear too many times. She crawled into the dark space, trembling. He closed the board and stood still, rifle ready. Moments later, the cabin door opened with a hiss. 3 tall alien soldiers entered, their armor glowing faintly in the dark. The leader's eyes scanned the room. Human, he hissed. We track Imperial blood here. Have you seen a girl? Elias leaned against the table casually. Only one thing in this house, he said. An old man in bad weather. The soldier stepped closer, his boots wet from the rain. We can smell her kind. You lie. Elias looked him in the eyes. Smells off. Maybe it's the damp air. You people always confuse that, the alien growled, raising his weapon. Before he could fire, lightning flashed outside, lighting the room in white. Elias's rifle was already pointed at his head. Last warning, Elias said coldly. For a moment, no one breathed. Then the soldier backed away slowly, muttering something in his language. Watch yourself, human. That girl brings death. They left. The door slammed shut behind them. Elias waited for the sound of their engines to fade. Then he lifted the floorboard. They're gone, he whispered. Lyra crawled out, tears streaming down her face. You shouldn't have done that, she said. If they find out, he cut her off. If I didn't, you'd be gone by now. She stared at him, the first spark of something new in her eyes. Not fear, something like trust. Outside, the storm quieted. Inside, silence fell, but it wasn't peace. It was the silence before something much bigger. Lyra sat near the fire again, her hands clutching his coat. You don't even know what you saved, she whispered. Elias looked at her, the glow from the fire lighting his scarred face. Maybe not, he said softly, but I'll find out. Far above the clouds, a massive alien ship adjusted its course. On board, a dark figure watched the readings on his screen, the broken signal of the Emperor's blood mark. He smiled coldly. Found her. The night faded into a pale gray morning. The storm was gone, but the air felt heavy, like the calm before a greater wave. Inside the cabin, the fire had burned low. Elias sat at the table, cleaning his rifle, his eyes half on the door and half on the silent girl sitting near the window. Lyra hadn't slept. The glow on her neck still flickered faintly under her skin, like an ember that refused to die. She traced it with her fingers, quietly whispering something in a strange alien tongue. Elias finally spoke. You said your uncle calls you through that mark. Why? She didn't look at him. Because my blood belongs to him. Elias frowned. No one owns blood, Lyra. She smiled weakly. In your world, maybe not. In mine, every drop of royal blood is bound by sigil. It's how they control us, he leaned forward. Control you? Lyra nodded. When I was born, the Emperor marked me. Said my father's shame would live inside me. This sigil, she touched the faint light, is made from his DNA. It connects me to his mind. I can feel his anger even across stars. Elias stared at her, silent for a long time. Then he said, So that's why they can track you. Her voice trembled. Yes, they know when I breathe. When I cry. Even now, he knows I'm alive. He set his rifle down and sighed. Then we need to break it. Lyra looked at him in disbelief. You can't break a blood sigil. Not even an emperor can undo his own. It's forever. Elias leaned back thinking. His mind flashed with memories. Battlefields. Soldiers screaming as alien fire burned through their armor. Strange symbols glowing on enemy weapons. He had seen marks like this before, tech fused with life. Not magic, science, he stood up. Maybe it's not forever. Maybe it's just something no one dared to fight. Lyra tilted her head. You speak as if you've seen it before. I fought their kind for 10 years, he said quietly. See, the Emperor's mind tech was their greatest weapon. They called it Living Command. Her silver eyes widened. You survived that? Barely. He touched the scar on his temple, a thin line glowing faintly under the skin. Their psychic soldiers tried to break my mind. But I woke up different. Doctors said humans couldn't resist, yet I did. Lyra looked at him with awe. That's why, when you touched me last night, the pain stopped. The mark went silent. Elias realized she was right. His touch had disrupted the Emperor's bond. Not because of luck, but because of something inside him. Something alien to both species. He walked closer to her. Maybe whatever they did to me can block it again. But it'll hurt. She looked up at him, eyes trembling. I've lived in pain since birth, Elias. I can handle it. He placed his hand over the sigil gently. The glow flared, hot and bright. Lyra gasped as her body tensed. The air thickened around them. For a moment, Elias felt a cold voice whisper inside his mind. You dare touch what is mine? He didn't flinch. He pressed harder, focusing every thought on one truth. She's not yours. The light exploded, filling the room in silver fire. The floor cracked beneath them, the air roaring like a storm. Then silence. Lyra fell against him, breathing fast. The glow was gone. The sigil had turned gray, lifeless. She looked up at him, tears falling silently. It's gone, she whispered. He can't see me anymore. Elias helped her sit. His hand trembled slightly, his head pounding. We bought time, he said softly. But he'll notice soon. Outside the sky was clear, too clear. Far beyond the clouds, hidden in orbit, the Emperor's flagship pulsed red. The connection had broken and 1,000 sensors screamed the same message. The bond is severed. Inside the cabin, Lyra closed her eyes for the first peaceful breath of her life. But in the silence that followed, Elias knew one truth. Freedom always had a price, and somewhere far above, that price was coming. The night returned to Zareth Prime like a quiet predator, soft, heavy, waiting. Elias's cabin stood alone under the silver moons. Inside, a dim fire glowed and the air felt strange, half warm, half tense, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Lyra sat near the flames, wrapped in Elias's coat. Her fingers traced the faded lines on her collarbone, the place where the glowing sigil had once pulsed with pain. Now only a faint scar remained, pale and silent. She looked up at Elias, who was fixing the door he had barricaded earlier. It's quiet tonight, she said softly. Too quiet. Elias didn't look up. Quiet means they're thinking. And thinking means danger. She smiled faintly. You sound like a soldier. I was, he said simply, tightening a bolt. A long time ago, Lyra's eyes softened. What happened to you? He paused for a moment as if unsure whether to answer. Then he said, war happened. I lost my wife. Lost the reason to fight. He turned to her slowly. Until last night. Their eyes met, human brown and alien silver. For a long second, the room was filled only with the soft crackle of fire and distant thunder beyond the clouds. Lyra broke the silence. When you touched me, I felt something I've never felt before. Warmth, safety. Elias nodded slightly. That's how it should feel. She shook her head. Not for my kind. My people don't believe in warmth, only obedience. He walked closer and sat across from her. Then maybe you should start believing in something new. She looked at him for a moment, then asked, Elias, why did you buy me? He smiled faintly. Because no one else did. Lyra blinked, surprised by the simple answer. But behind those words she felt something deeper. Pity, maybe even hope. The rain began again. Light but constant. The firelight flickered over her face, making her silver eyes glow softly. She leaned her head on her knees. You don't understand what you've done. When the bond broke, the Emperor felt it. He'll send more than soldiers this time. Elias stood up and went to the small window. He looked at the distant sky, where faint red glows blinked beyond the clouds. Ships. He could already see them. Then we don't have much time. Lyra's breathing quickened. If they take me, they'll kill you too. They hate humans more than traitors. He turned back toward her. Let them try. Before she could reply, she winced suddenly, grabbing her head. A faint light shimmered under her skin again. Elias rushed to her side. What's happening? He asked, her voice shook. He's calling again, but it's different. He's angry, he's reaching through others. Elias held her shoulders, steady but gentle. Breathe. Focus on my voice. Her body trembled violently. The scar on her neck flared white, then red. It burns, she cried. Without thinking, Elias pressed his palm against the mark again. The moment he touched her, the glow pulsed, not in pain but in rhythm with his heartbeat. The air shimmered around them, thick with unseen energy. Outside, lightning cracked across the sky. Lyra gasped, eyes wide. She wasn't seeing the cabin anymore, and she saw flashes of the Emperor's throne room, his golden eyes filled with rage. But something else appeared too. A wall of light between her and him, shaped like a human hand. Elias's voice cut through the vision. You're stronger than him, Lyra. He can't own you anymore. The fire burst upward, burning bright blue for a second, then died down. The mark faded again, leaving silence. Lyra collapsed against him, breathing hard. How did you do that? Elias looked down at his hand, still warm from the strange energy. I didn't, you did. She looked up at him, her face pale but calm now. No, you shielded me. No human should be able to resist that kind of mind call. Who are you, Elias? He hesitated. Someone the aliens tried to break. Someone they failed to control. Lyra reached out and touched his scar. Maybe that's why you were meant to find me. For the first time, Elias smiled faintly. Maybe. The fire dimmed to soft embers. Outside, the red lights in the sky began to move, spreading wider. Ships forming a hunting pattern. Lyra saw them through the window. They're coming. Elias stood, loading his rifle again, his jaw set. Then tonight, they'll learn what happens when humans stop running. As thunder rolled once more, the quiet house of storms became a fortress of defiance, and the widower and the bastard alien, daughter, prepared to face the night that would change the galaxy. The red lights in the sky grew larger as dawn crept over the horizon. The air trembled with distant engines. From the window of the small wooden cabin, Elias could see 3 black dots moving slowly across the clouds. They weren't ships, and they were hunters. Lyra stood beside him, pale but calm. Her silver eyes glowed faintly as the light of morning touched her face. They found us, she said quietly. Elias nodded, his jaw tight. Then we don't wait. He turned and began packing a small bag, food, batteries, and an old datapad. His hands moved fast, trained by years of survival. Lyra watched him, her heart racing. Elias, she whispered, you could still leave me here. If they take me, they'll stop hunting you. He glanced up sharply. I don't abandon people. You'll die if you stay. He strapped on his old combat vest and loaded his rifle. I already died once, he said. This time I'll live on my terms. Outside, the first hunter ship descended through the mist, a silent black arrow cutting the clouds. It landed near the river below, its wings folding in like blades. From its hold stepped 3 alien assassins, wrapped in armor that shimmered like liquid metal. Their faces were hidden behind bone-white masks. Each carried a spear that hummed with red energy. Lyra's hands trembled. They're royal executioners, she said, voice shaking. The Emperor's private guard. They kill entire planets if ordered. Elias looked out calmly. Then they'll regret coming to this one. He pulled a small metal box from the shelf and opened it. Inside were old human war tools, EMP grenades, signal jammers, and a pulse knife. He handed Lyra a small bracelet-like device. Press this when you're scared, he said. It hides your energy signature for 10 seconds. Use it wisely. She looked at it as if it were magic. You still had these? He smirked. Some habits never die. As they stepped outside, the mountain wind hit their faces. The air smelled of ozone and ash. Elias led her through the trees, boots silent on the wet ground. The hunters were close now, moving in perfect formation. Split up, Elias whispered. Head for the cave up the ridge. I'll draw them off. No. Lyra grabbed his arm. They'll kill you. He looked at her, eyes steady. If I die buying you 10 more minutes, it's worth it. Before she could protest, he was gone, vanishing between the trees like a ghost. Moments later, the hunters landed near the cabin. The leader's mask turned toward the trail. Human scent, he hissed. And royal blood. They split apart, two heading up the ridge, one staying behind. Elias waited behind a fallen log, heart steady. He watched their shadows pass between the trees, silent and precise. When the first one turned, Elias tossed a small metal ball. The explosion was silent, a flash of blue light, and the hunter fell, armor crackling with dead circuits. The second spun, raising his spear. Elias fired twice. The plasma bolts hit hard, and one in the chest, one in the throat. The alien collapsed with a metallic cry, but the third one had seen him. A sudden beam of red light tore through the trees, blasting dirt and fire around Elias. He rolled behind a rock, panting. The hunter stalked forward, voice cold. "You're only human. Die quickly." Elias smirked, wiping blood from his cheek. "That's the thing about humans," he said. "We don't die when we're told to." He pressed a small switch. The old cabin below exploded in a burst of blue fire, a trap he'd rigged years ago. The shockwave threw the hunter backward. Elias charged, tackling the creature and plunging the pulse knife through its armor. The weapon hissed, cutting through flesh and metal alike. When silence fell, smoke rose between the trees. Elias stood, breathing hard, his hands trembling slightly. From the ridge, Lyra ran down toward him, her eyes wide with horror and awe. You fought them alone?" He turned, wiping his blade. "Not alone," he said softly. "You warned me. That counts." She looked at him, this human widower who had just killed royal assassins with nothing but old weapons and courage. For the first time, Lyra smiled. Maybe the stories about humans aren't lies after all. Elias looked up at the darkening sky. More ships were coming, dozens of them forming a ring around the mountain. "No," he said quietly. "The stories haven't even started yet." He turned toward her. "Time to end this." Far above them, in the Emperor's throne room, a red light blinked. The royal guard was gone. His voice rumbled across the stars. "Bring them to me alive. I want to see the human who broke my blood." The smoke from the ruined cabin rose high into the dawn sky. The mountain was quiet again, but it wasn't peace. It was the silence that came before something much worse. Elias and Lyra stood at the edge of the cliff, the wind howling around them. Below, the river shimmered like molten glass. Above them, black shapes moved behind the clouds, too large to be hunters. Warships. Lyra's voice was soft but shaking. "He's coming." Elias turned to her, loading the last pulse cell into his rifle. "Let him." She looked at him, half afraid, half amazed. "You don't understand. The Emperor doesn't come for anyone. When he moves, worlds die." Elias's jaw tightened. "Then this mountain's going to make history." The ground trembled. A golden ship broke through the clouds, silent and enormous. Its hull was covered in glowing runes, each symbol pulsing like a heartbeat. From its belly, a ray of light descended. Not fire, but energy bending space itself. The air turned warm and heavy. Lyra fell to her knees, clutching her chest. "He's here. I can feel him." Elias caught her before she collapsed. Her silver eyes flickered white for a second, as if a second voice spoke inside her. Then through the blinding light, a tall figure appeared. Not in body, but in projection. The Emperor. He stood 3 meters tall, wrapped in robes of living gold. His face was calm, almost beautiful, but his eyes burned like suns. When he spoke, the mountain seemed to echo with his voice. "Human," he said. "You touch what is royal. You break what is mine, and yet you still breathe." Elias met his gaze without flinching. "You call her yours. She's a child, not a possession." The Emperor's smile was slow and cruel. "She carries my blood. Her father betrayed me, and she is his punishment. I let her live to remind the galaxy what defiance costs." Lyra's breathing quickened. She tried to stand, but her body shook under the weight of his presence. Elias held her steady. "You'll get no reminder here," he said coldly. "You'll get resistance." The Emperor's voice darkened. "You are brave for a creature that barely deserves the term sentient. Do you think love and pity can stand against blood law?" Elias stepped forward, rifle in hand, his boots crunching on gravel. "I think love is the only thing that ever did." The Emperor's golden eyes narrowed. "Then die with your hope." He raised his hand. The air split open with a roar of power. The ground shook. Lightning tore the sky apart. Lyra screamed as the mark on her neck flared to life again. Not red, but pure white. The Emperor was trying to reforge the bond through force. Elias grabbed her, shouting over the thunder, "Fight him, Lyra! Don't let him in!" "I can't." she cried, her body arching in pain. He's too strong. Elias held her face in both hands, forcing her to look at him. Then use my strength. You broke him once. You can do it again. Something flickered in her eyes, fear turning into fire. You'll die if I try. Then make it worth it, he said, she screamed, and the mountain answered. Her veins glowed silver, the sigil burning so bright it lit the sky. The Emperor's projection flickered as if struck by static. His expression changed, surprise, then rage. What have you done? He thundered. Lyra stood tall now, the wind swirling around her like a storm made of light. You used my blood to enslave me, she shouted. Now I use it to end you. Elias shielded his eyes as the energy burst outward, a massive shockwave of white light that tore through the Emperor's hologram. For a moment, the great ship above the clouds shimmered, then cracked like glass. The golden projection screamed and vanished. Silence fell again. The sky cleared. The ships that surrounded the mountain began to drift, directionless, powerless. Lyra collapsed against Elias, weak but breathing. Did we win? He looked up at the fading light. We survived. That's enough for now. But far above, beyond the broken clouds, one faint red light still glowed, a single surviving fragment of the Emperor's signal. A whisper echoed through the void, too soft for them to hear. You cannot kill a voice, human. You only make it louder. Elias looked at Lyra, who slept in his arms, and said quietly, Then we'll be louder too. And as the dawn finally broke over the mountains, the hunted human and the bastard alien daughter became something far greater, a beginning the galaxy could never erase. The first rays of dawn spread across the mountain like golden threads. The storm was gone. The sky was quiet, painted in soft blues and silver clouds. For the first time in forever, there was no thunder, no engines, no voices of war. Elias sat near the cliff's edge, his arm wrapped around Lyra's shoulders. She leaned weakly against him, eyes half open, her silver hair glimmering in the light. The ground around them was scorched and cracked, the marks of what had happened only hours ago. Everything was silent now. Too silent. Lyra's voice came out faint and fragile. Did he die? Elias looked at the sky where broken metal floated like distant stars, the remains of the Emperor's great ship. No one really knows what happens to monsters when they fall, he said softly. But I know his voice is gone. Lyra nodded slowly, a tear sliding down her cheek. Then it's over, he smiled faintly. For now. She looked up at him, her expression soft. You could have left me. You should have. You risked everything for someone not even human. Elias met her gaze. I didn't see a slave or a royal. I saw a person who deserved a chance. Her lips trembled into a small smile. You sound like my father. He once said that kindness is a rebellion stronger than war. He chuckled lightly. Smart man. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. He died for loving a human woman. I thought love was a curse. Elias looked at the rising sun. No. Love is what makes the curses break. For a long time they sat together, letting the warmth of daylight touch their faces. The mountain wind carried the scent of rain and fire. Below, the river glowed gold. Then from beyond the valley, a faint hum echoed. Ships. Elias tensed, reaching for his rifle, but Lyra shook her head. No, these are not his. From behind the clouds, a group of smaller vessels appeared, old, rusted, but flying the white emblem of the Free Worlds Coalition, a small rebel group that had long fought against the Empire. The ships hovered above them before landing on the plateau. A few humans and aliens stepped out wearing mixed armor and tired faces. Their leader, a scarred alien woman, looked around at the burned mountains and then at Elias and Lyra. Who are you two? She asked. Elias stood tall, supporting Lyra as he spoke. Just survivors, the woman frowned. The Emperor's flagship was destroyed here. That wasn't survival. That was war. Elias exchanged a glance with Lyra. She smiled faintly. Maybe both. The leader looked at Lyra, noticing the faint gray scar on her neck. Her eyes widened. You're royal blood, Lyra didn't deny it. I was, she said softly. Now I'm just free. The alien woman looked at her in silence, then nodded with respect. Whatever you did, the Emperor's armies are gone. The galaxy will hear of this. Elias shook his head. Let them hear about peace instead. The leader smiled. Peace from a soldier? That's new. Elias looked toward the horizon. It's time for new things. The rebels helped them aboard one of the ships. As the engines roared to life, Lyra looked out the window, watching the mountain shrink below, the place where her chains had finally broken. She turned to Elias. "Where will we go now?" He leaned back, closing his tired eyes. "Somewhere quiet. Somewhere that needs rebuilding," she smiled softly. "Then we build." He opened one eye and grinned. "Together?" "Together," she said. As the ship rose higher, sunlight spilled across the clouds. The burned world below began to look small, distant, like a story ending, making space for another to begin. Lyra looked at Elias, the human widower who had bought her not out of greed, but mercy, and whispered, "Maybe the galaxy isn't cruel after all." Elias smiled at her words, his voice steady and gentle. "It's cruel, Lyra, but sometimes we fight back by being kind." The ship broke through the clouds, leaving the ruined mountain far below. The Emperor's voice had faded into silence, but the legend of the human and the alien girl, the two souls who defied blood and empire, had only just begun. And somewhere in the quiet of the stars, hope stirred again.